before handing in my right before handing in my manuscript and then right before my defense. So that was terrible. Definitely don't recommend that strategy. But it meant that my preparation time was at the last minute very impacted. So maybe I probably should have and could have began a little earlier, but just because of my personal life circumstance and not expecting crises to happen right before both of those events. And so for the defense in particular, I sort of rallied the afternoon before and it was the next morning. And so I am speaking to a very condensed preparation process, although obviously the whole thing is preparation. And I guess actually that was my biggest takeaway, is being in the situation where I was suddenly forced to prepare sort of woozily in a couple hours. I ended up reminding myself and reassuring myself that like the whole degree actually is also preparation. The defense is kind of just this final piece on top. And so I ended up feeling like it wasn't that I had to do exceptional, extremely particular preparation for this, because we're all ready in many ways by the time we get there. That said, I did do some creative slide preparation to sometimes go against recommendations on certain slides to like have more text if I felt like that was the area where I needed that text. So I kind of set myself up a little bit in that way. And then areas I felt more comfortable, I was like, great, put an image on there. I know exactly what I'm saying. And then Zoom allowed me to do some creative things like emergency backup notes on the side for very particular things I thought I might forget, like a definition or something. And I didn't need them, but you always wonder if you might. So I did myself a couple little favors there, I guess, because of my lack of prep time. And then for the most part, I just read over key parts that felt like it had been a while, and just really made sure I felt like I knew what I was talking about. So for me, it was like the methodology. I wanted to really remind myself, and the theoretical framework, like how did they, because you have so many thoughts about certain ideas at a certain point. I wondered if I'd kind of gotten away from the original a little bit, because I had all these findings on top of the theoretical frameworks, and then I had all these takeaways, and I didn't want to forget what the original theoretical framework really was. So just keeping that in the forefront of my mind before going in, or like what really is Foucauldian discourse analysis itself, because then I get so wrapped up in my own process. So I did a little bit of rereading and reminding right beforehand, just because I knew there'd be questions about that. And it felt like something that I could kind of have gotten a bit down the garden path with. But then the night before, I just relaxed. And because I felt like I was trying to tell myself all the things Vicky had always told me, like, your work by then, all those great pep talks you get from your supervisor before that, like, you're ready. So I forget if there was a second part to that question, but that was kind of my main preparation journey, I would say.
No, thank you so much. I don't actually remember what my second
perfect.
question was, but
well,
that
I'm sure
was
we
great.
covered it. There's a question in the chat too. Just wondering if you'd speak about the timeline of events, starting at the component of finishing writing the dissertation and submitting for an external examiner. Ooh, good question. Vicky, I might need your help here because it's all a muddle at this point. But, and actually I think Vicky's frozen, so I'm on my own. Okay, so yes, I think it's 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks, different guidelines everywhere, between when you have to submit your absolute final manuscript, like literally don't touch it again, to your defense. And so I and Vicky did the thing where we like kind of put the cart before the horse and just set the date, even though like we were still tweaking some bits of the manuscript. And that was fine. But then of course I got this terrible GI illness and then was scrambling while like also in Emerge myself or whatever too, and experiencing some of the discourses that I was writing about, and was scrambling to get the manuscript done because I absolutely had this deadline and we basically already had a defense date in mind. So like, I wouldn't say it was not recommended because actually, 8 weeks is a really long time and I just wanted to finish, and I defended June 28th and, everyone just goes on vacation in the summer. So I didn't want to postpone because I felt like it would get into the fall, and I was teaching a grad course that I needed a PhD for. So I was like, I'm doing this. So yeah, it was 8 weeks, and like, we all just made it work. But that then you kind of just hang around, honestly, for those 8 weeks, because you can't touch the manuscript. You can make your slides. And then you can do what I did, which is leave preparation for the end and then get sick and then not do it. So that's my real journey. But yeah, that's what happened. Oh, Vicky's power went out. Bummer. Well, that's fine. I think the recording hopefully is probably still in progress, but if not, we're all here and it's fine. Okay. Zach.
I was wondering, just because it was over Zoom, right? Your defense, and who's to say what the future will bring? Was there anything about it being done over Zoom that kind of like was surprising, or you're like, oh, I wish I'd known that, either like for good or ill, just to be aware of for anyone else that might end up in that situation?
Yeah, totally. Honestly, there was a part of it that was great because I did have my emergency backup notes, which I would not have had in the room. And so I had been a bit disappointed when I found out it was going to be on Zoom, because I had some family and stuff that was hoping to attend, and like colleagues and everything. And I felt, oh yeah, well, will it feel like I'm in a room without that type of like nice support? But then anyway, so yeah, the emergency backup notes was kind of a helpful thing. I also did the thing where instead of sharing PowerPoint in the full screen, I did the little window, and so then you could still see everyone's faces. And I thought, oh, that'll be nice because I can kind of see their reactions in real time as I'm presenting. But then what surprised me is everyone just turned their camera off. So I was like, oh, okay, because I guess they thought I was in full screen. So I wish I'd prepared to speaking to an empty room, essentially. And you never would be doing that in person, so that was a bit odd, but like I think they were being respectful, but it was something that was surprising to me. And then I would say a real benefit is, okay, so actually the night before, or right before my defense, my stepmom said to me that, just enjoy this. You're never again maybe going to have a room of people who have read your work and just want to engage with you about it. And it's actually so wonderful to have that dedicated time and space. And so then it ended up feeling really kind of cozy and nice to just have the committee and the examiners there, because it was all people who knew it, read it. I tailored my PowerPoint presentation to the fact that they all knew it and had read it. And, today it was really different because none of you have read the work or know any of the findings at all. So it was nice to know, like really know who the audience was and get to, and, you still have to go through all the things, but to like, just kind of know that you're in that room where everyone's read your work and really wants to engage with you about it. But yeah, I hope Vicky's okay with me telling the story, but then there's this kind of weird thing at the end where it just ends, and like you're sitting at your computer and it's just done, and like there's no one in the next room waiting for you to like clap or whatever. I mean, my partner was, but like there's not the whole kind of crowd. So Vicky called me right afterward. Vicky, I said, I hope you're okay with me telling the story, but Vicky called me right afterward, and it was so wonderful to do, to like have that little debrief and that chat, because it is very strange to see the Zoom window close and it's over. And so yeah, but like my partner had got like a little bit of champagne and some flowers and stuff. So like, I mean, you can't tell people in your life what to do, but like there was that kind of strange moment of the Zoom window closing, and like nice to have that. So like tell your family, your friend or partner, whoever, to like take the day off, because it was actually really nice to have someone around when the computer gets closed down.
So my apologies, for some reason I lost connection and all that fun stuff. Scott had a question in the chat, which I lost.
We got that one.
Got that one? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, all good. Does anybody else have any questions? Now I'm just automatically moderating. Sorry, Vicky. I took over for a minute and now I'm power hungry. Okay.
It's all good. I'm just here to support the process. It's all good. Michelle, go ahead, please.
Hey, thanks so much, Allie. I really loved your presentation. It was so clear to follow, and your diagrams were amazing. I was wondering, so you did your defense on Zoom. Did you do like all of your other writing for the most part by distance? Like you weren't, yeah. Do you have any like I'm also in a different province, and so is Sab. Do you have any like just advice on how to keep going and like staying connected when you're not in the area?
Oh, that's such a great question. Yeah, I moved well 2 years ago today. So yeah, I did all of my writing and data collection actually and everything kind of technically from away. Though we were at a COVID phase where I think I probably would have just been at home anyway, but at any rate, like I was away. You know, I'm a bit of an extrovert in many ways, but like I found that by the time I was really in it, I kind of just wanted everyone to go away. Not Vicky, but like some people in my life, I just needed like little, and I went on a couple dissertation writing retreats to just like really get into it. And I really wanted to have kind of intensive periods of writing where I was like just in my own head. And so that's not to say I didn't want to stay connected, but I think I was surprised in myself to really want those like alone times to just like really think through stuff. And sometimes I needed longer periods of time than like childcare and all the things in my life allowed. So I kind of tried to carve that out, and like, you know, like 6.5 hours wasn't enough or whatever with all like doing laundry in the middle and stuff. So that was a challenge at times, but I actually think I might have found it difficult to write like in a shared office or something, because I wanted to be so in my own mind about it. And maybe that's not everybody's process, but it was definitely mine. And then when I kind of would emerge from those times, like at the end of a chapter draft or something, I mean, all I can say is just that, like, I'm so grateful Vicky was just kind of waiting in the wings. Like, you really made yourself available. And just to, like, when I would emerge at these sort of random times, just to be able to provide, like, very quick feedback and, like, have conversations if needed. But I was surprised by kind of how random those lengths of times were. I don't know that I many times said, you know, we'll have this to you in 2 weeks. And then I just absolutely did. I think often I would kind of emerge at random times, because that's how long the thought process took me. So I think it made it maybe more intense in some ways to be away, because I did do that kind of tunneling in process. But I don't know, I kind of liked it. It was just a really intensive thing. And maybe that's kind of the excitement and the process for some people of doing this major dissertation work, is just like really being in it. I don't know. But yeah, I expected I'd like speak to colleagues more and peers and everything. And kind of just really wanted to get in there and have all those swirling thoughts and then like figure out how they were going to go on paper. Surprised myself.
Can I add?
Yeah,
I'm just
please.
one to add to it's different at different stages. And I think that's one of the things at different points. I think in candidacy in particular is a time you need your peeps.
Yeah.
I you know, a lot like you need to like be able to bounce it around. And but there is a period, and I hear this from a lot of students, and remember it myself, where you just go in. You really don't. You just need to go into that dive. But I think there's also that period of just needing to reach out and connect and have that. So for folks, no matter where you are, I think it's having some sort of network that you have, that you can bounce your ideas around together. And also, and then in your supervisory committee, having people that you can connect with and ask questions and have that time. And you'll need different things at different times. And but it's and even navigating with people to say, like, you do this and I do this. And I think about my own cohort. We were all very intensely would bounce around together, but once we got into our data analysis, we drifted apart, and then we came back. So building kind of that piece. But I know when you're not on site, it's difficult, and it's been difficult, right? Because we haven't been on site, we've been all disconnected. And so just building in some of those things, bouncing it around with your peers and also with your supervisor about how to keep that momentum going. As supervisors, we've all worked with that dip in energy and the dip in momentum. And so kind of how to get out of that is something we're all accustomed to. So have those conversations as well.
That's such a great reminder, Vicky, because now I'm thinking about the broader process, not just the writing. And for example, like Sunny and I were messaging all the time because we were in data collection at the same time. And it was just like, I'm speaking for Sunny, but I feel like me anyway, and maybe Sunny, maybe I was just bugging you, but like we both were like really wanting that connection of someone else who was at that phase and just bouncing ideas off and like, have you heard back from so-and-so? And what do you think? Does recruitment flyer look good? Just all those kinds of things. And it was so helpful and great. And then when I started to get into data analysis and had these wild maps drawn all over a piece of paper, I really wanted to like break out and get to Vicky and be like, does this make sense? And then once some of that structure was starting to fall into place and I was really getting into it, I think, yeah, that's maybe when that shift happened.
Thanks, Allie. That's really helpful to hear.
So if nobody has, I would think it's one question if I can ask is just, Allie, if you talk a bit about the exam and responding to examiners' questions, and just it's something to think about, and I know people are all at different stages, and but that it happens throughout, right? It happens, in comps and candidacy, and then this exam, these examiners, these magic examiners who aren't just your committee anymore either. But just a little bit about, how you thought through and kind of, and just tackled the questions that were happening kind of in the exam itself, if people would be interested to hear a bit.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So one thing I found is that I think this is probably the case in like every room, every defense room, is that everybody has of course, a different way of posing those questions. And so some people are going to come with a lot of questions that are just like, tell me more about this process that you did. And like, or maybe something really open-ended or kind of like invitational, just kind of like, let's go over that, or I'd love to hear more. And then some people are going to be like a bit more direct or specific, like, you wrote this, why did you use that language? Or I remember getting one question like, you said it this exact way, but like, did you mean this exact way? And it actually opened up this whole almost like different theoretical way of constructing everything. And I was like, wow, that's a very specific language question, but actually is a lot bigger. So like, I mean, first of all, just all questions can be different, but also different people in the room have different ways of asking them. And so I had someone whose questions were a bit more kind of like direct. And so I needed to a little bit be not intimidated by that style of asking questions, when someone else was just like, I'd love to hear about these things, and just think like, these are all just questions. I'm just going to take each of them as they come, regardless of how they come, and just that it's going to be a mixed room. So that was like one thing that I think just a lot of Vicky's stories of your own defense had kind of prepared me for a little bit. And I'd only had a chance to go to one ever. And I thought, I'll go to more when I get closer. And then COVID happened. So, which I think is one of the great things about doing things like this. But yeah, so I guess I wasn't fully prepared for that. But in thinking back, I might have given myself a little bit of a pep talk around that before going in. And then, there was another thought I had about answering questions. So another, funny thing about it is that you have questions from the external examiner, but they're usually not there. And so because they're not part of the room, when their questions land, they can sometimes be a bit different than the conversation that is happening in the room. And sometimes they can be really different than the sort of vibe of the room, for lack of a better word. And like, I know Vicky has, your own stories about that. And I remember, I honestly don't remember what the question was, but I remember there being a question where it kind of felt like the whole room was maybe already anticipating my answer. Like, and if that person had been in the room, they might not have asked that question, just because it was a bit like off from the way that the conversation was going. But because I'd heard Vicky tell the story, before, I thought like, okay, my job here is to just answer it, even if maybe we all kind of agree in the room, but like, I could just say what we're all thinking and just put it out there. And like, that's my role, is to just answer every question that's asked to me, even if it's a bit wacky, or even if it misunderstands, I feel, something in my work, or maybe if it's like not even fully correct, but you just have to answer the question and be like, well, it's this way, and here's some more information about that. So yeah, I think like that's one thing that I happened to be more prepared for. But if I hadn't had the benefit of hearing, other stories, might have caught me off guard a little bit. Just to have to kind of go through the motions of being the question answerer in the room. And then, I think by the end of the program, like we're all experts in this because we've had the comps defense or whatever it's called, and then the candidacy or proposal defense, but like that, like we obviously can't do this every time, every question, but like being okay with not fully having thought about something before, if it's a really new direction, or it's like wanting to give something a bit more thought, ultimately giving some answer, but like not needing to have everything wrapped up perfectly in a bow at the defense, and feeling like you just have to give these incredibly certain, definite, like factual answers to absolutely everything. And that it's either still, everybody knows there's still a process of like probably doing some publications afterward or some more KT work or whatever, and that it's okay if there's new ideas in the room that continue to push you further, that doesn't mean that you did something wrong, obviously. And yeah, so I think that was part of it too. And yeah, I felt like mine was a bit of a mix of like there being moments of it being quite informal and then much more formal, and just kind of trying to like ride the wave of it a little bit, and trying to keep a bit of my own steady stream, but also like adapt a bit as it went along. Which again, I think we're all kind of used to by the end of the program throughout the other defenses. I would say it's like some ways a bit more formal, but I do think the other parts of the program prepare us really well for that. Was there anything you wanted to add, Vicky? I know it was your own question, but to that?
Yeah, just for context, if the external is not in the room, and more but nursing hasn't embraced this as much on campus. It used to be UBC, no externals were invited. And now with, Zoom and that kind of thing, externals are able to come. And other universities, externals are actually required to be in the room. But if they are not, the supervisor reads the questions. The supervisor can't change the questions. They have to be read verbatim from the externals report. So it's a very choppy, it's a choppy kind of thing that happens, because there's a time in sequencing of who gets to question when, and the chair coordinates all of that. But it is and the other pieces is we are not allowed to share the chair's report or the externals report with the candidate until after the exam. So you don't get to see what the external said. I can't give, the heads up on the questions. Like it is, that is like the absolute forbidden no. So that stays confidential from the candidate until after the exam. And so, but all the examining committee members get it a week prior to the exam, and we all get to read it, and then the supervisor reads those questions, and it is kind of a disjointed kind of process, but and you just kind of roll with it. I think, Allie, your advice to kind of roll with the energy in the room and that kind of thing is really, really valuable in how it gets set up. And some people do mock exams, some people don't. It really will depend on who you are and how you engage, and some supervisors require you to do one with them but always remember, by the time you get to this point, my greatest piece of advice is you are the most expert person in the room to that particular study, and that particular, like, it's yours, and you just own it, and you don't have to apologize for that, or it's yours and you own it, and that's, your committee decides, has supported you to get there. And, and the external, if you're in the room, the external has supported that you're ready for exam as well. And so recognize that, come in with confidence, and know, like, things unfold and go on. But it's like when people have already signed off. And so you're coming in to a kind of a venue where it's, and you're right, different people come at this differently. People can be really aggressive examiners. They can be what I would call aggressive. People can be so laid back, or people, the other piece of advice is remember that as we progress in our academic career, we get less and less able to step out of our own boxes and our own way of thinking. And so even knowing who the examiners are, you kind of, if you know their work and depending on where they're at in their trajectory, you know where they're going to go in many ways. And part of that is a conversation with your supervisor to kind of navigate that, because it happens. It's sort of this progression. And so, you know, and different people have different approaches and all that kind of thing. But it should be stressful yet fun. That's how I think of it. It should be
I think
something.
it was.
Yeah. And because it is a culmination, and it is, you are so ready. And the fatigue that Allie mentioned is very real. There are dips and valleys, and then life, right? We're all adulting. So that continues to occur. But embrace it, enjoy it, and have fun with it. So that is and then keep having, we keep having these kinds of conversations, because I think even as some of you haven't been to candidacy yet, it's different than your comps, right? Your candidacy I actually think candidacy in some ways can be more challenging, because you don't know yet, right? You've put your best guess, but you haven't done it yet. But it's a great way to engage and think about how to work with your research and your topic area and your methodology and methods. And so I'm just conscious of the time. Zach, before we wrap up.
Oh,
please.
great.
I can ask if anyone has any other question, feel free to jump in. So
Go for it.
Okay. One thing, so this is more about maybe your overall process, how you approached it. So, the goal is to end up submit a dissertation, but then also presumably to go on and do other things. And then also we are hopefully all doing this because we find it really interesting. And so how do you balance, like, I'm just finding as time goes on, it seems like there's all sorts of interesting, shiny things that present themselves. And how do you balance, like, following the shiny things because A, they're interesting, and B, actually it's helpful to do some of this stuff with also like, right, I need to get this dissertation done. How did you approach that tension?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked together, I'm absolutely the same way. And I always want to do a million other things throughout the whole process. So like you, and I know all of us, like, it was just a balance all the way along. And trying to remind myself that there are going to be times I just have to focus more, which I think we get, again, so much practice with. Like, we all have to do it for comms. It's only 2 weeks ultimately, but like, we just have to shut everything else down. And then we practice that again, and we write our entire proposal, and maybe we're doing that around the margins, or maybe we write it really intensively or something. But for me, I pretty much stopped doing everything when I was writing. And that for me is because I did a very quick, I would say, like, writing process in the end. I kind of had some timelines in mind, and I just intensively went into it. So that's not the only way to do it at all. But for me, I had to be fine to kind of shut it down, then like wrap up some projects, acknowledge that I was teaching at the time. It's not like I shut everything down. But I didn't want to have any other writing happening at the same time as writing my dissertation. So at least to be like diversifying some of those shiny things. So I wasn't contributing to publications anymore. I was just like, I'm out. I'm not doing this right now. Somebody else write it, or it's not happening. I can't do this writing and that writing. I'll teach, and that's great because it's different and it gets me out of my head, or like maybe I'll do something else in this other domain, but to keep my activities a bit diversified, and then just kind of tell myself I had to go into a period of doing that. And again, that was only my own process, but just be fine with it. But then other times, like, I don't know, you're data collecting and you only have one interview a week for a while, like, to go wild. So that was kind of how I tried to balance it over time. I'd probably do it a little differently if I did it all again, but that shutdown of writing during the dissertation writing was, I think, for me, the best choice for sure. I just needed to write one thing only and not get so burned out on other stuff that I felt like I couldn't give it the attention.
Great, thank you. So I feel like we've just scratching the surface on all of these kinds of things as we think about the various kind of milestones in the life of a PhD. So just so you know, we're excited to keep having conversations and happy to facilitate. You know, if people have ideas, they want something else like that, you know, like just a workshop or a come together. I'm happy to support and coordinate and bring in resources so that we can keep having these kinds of conversations within our school, and I know many others are as well. So if there are other things, other topics, or, you know, as we think about, you know, preparing for this or preparing for that, or even just this balancing, right? Or even just coming together to have a conversation about creating some balance or finishing or getting to this milestone, please know we're here. We're yeah, it is. I agree. And so I'm happy to work with students to figure out a way to grow this and keep it going, because I think it's great conversation. I learn a ton as well, and then it translates for me into how I engage in supervisory work and learning, and what I learn from each other I can pass along. So the co-learning is invaluable, and I really appreciate it as well. So yeah, we can kind of strategize a bit about a next step, and I can put my brain to some of that, and I'm happy to take any type of feedback that you have about what would be better, what, you know, and all that kind of stuff, and kind of continue to bring us together, and recognizing people will come in and out at different points to keep us moving. So I can tell you that in January, at some point in January, I'm going to speak for Sunny and Cindy. We're going to do a workshop that's from Cindy Elliott, who's the operations lead for emergency services and Providence Healthcare, and Sunny are going to talk about building those research health authority relationships for being able to do your dissertation, and what that means, and what they learned. And Cindy's also how do we continue to build those relationships with students so they have the opportunity to work in these settings. And so we're going to do that one in January. That's on the books. You know, there's some other stuff that we're planning, but happy to hear ideas. Capacity is kind of wants to engage with this and lead. We're going to do some stuff around community-based research as well, like very specific to what does reciprocity mean in that context, and how do you navigate that in the politics of the research world, and the you know, kind of the oppressive practices that hinder and limit our capacities for true partnership. And so we've got that on the books. So we will invite, but please feel free. I think we really need our community, right, to keep moving forward and support that everybody's successful. Recognizing PhD is fun and incredibly stressful. And so happy to continue to build community. I mean, there's already a fantastic and fabulous community, and I just feel like lucky I get to parachute in and out at different points, but also want to be helpful and useful as a group to help you all move on your own trajectories. So thank you.
Can I just say one thing, Vicky, before we fully ring off? I just want to say, you know, that from this side of things, you know, you're talking about making this a more regular practice for people who are finishing up, and like, it was so exciting to come on Zoom. And, you know, when you end the dissertation, it's just kind of over. Like, soon my UBC email will probably disappear one day, and I don't email everyone all the time. And, you know, you're kind of, you still have publications and all the stuff, but you're kind of just done. And to see name after name after name appear on Zoom, and like, I know all of you, it was such friendly faces. It's such a nice thing for me to be able to do and see all of you and feel like it all has a meaning, like even if it's just reporting back one time to everybody that you kind of meet along the way, it's actually so nice. And so if like my little experience is anything, I definitely think this should happen forever, because then all of you will have the opportunity to do it. And it's just so lovely to see everyone and to feel like there's that connection at the end, and it's not just over the day after your defense is done, you know. So thanks for doing this, and definitely continue it, and please keep inviting the public, because now I'm just the public and not UBC connected at all, and I want to keep coming to all of these, so please do.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time and being part of this and making it so engaging. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I look forward to the next session. And Allie, thank you so much again, and congratulations on everything. And I look forward. We'll continue to work together. And it was also equally exciting to see some great familiar faces I haven't seen for a while. So have a great weekend, everybody.